Hey guys, I recently saw the NASCAR YouTuber Eric Estep. If I'm saying his last name correctly, I apologize if I'm butchering it. But I saw he recently posted a video explaining his NASCAR fan story and how he became a NASCAR fan. And I saw that and decided I'd share my NASCAR fan story and how I became a fan of NASCAR. Now, in order to understand how I became a NASCAR fan, we have to go all the way back to before I was born. So, what happened was my dad has some friends who are also interested in NASCAR, and somewhere in the 90s, I don't know if it was early or late 90s, but somewhere in the 90s, some of his friends invited him to a NASCAR race at Watkins Glen, and I'll splice in some photos from that event that he took. But yeah, they invited him to the race, and he went with them, and I believe he had a good time. And ever since then, he's just been interested in NASCAR, and that's what sparked his interest in it. And then fast forward to after I was born, and my dad would just be watching NASCAR races on TV every Sunday, and I would just join in on watching them with him, and that's what really sparked the fire. That was just the initial spark for me. I would just watch NASCAR races with my dad, and then from there I just became interested in it. And since I became a NASCAR fan, and I've been a NASCAR fan since I was about 3 years old, since then, I have been to 6 NASCAR races in person. And like Eric Estep was saying, when you go to a NASCAR race in person, it is the experience of a lifetime. I will tell you that. It is an amazing experience. And like he was saying, if you want to make new NASCAR fans, like if you want to get like your friends or family or someone you care about interested in NASCAR, one thing that I will suggest and agree with Eric on is you should bring them to a NASCAR race in person so they can experience it firsthand. It may be a little bit pricey, but it's worth it. It is such a good experience with the cars going by at like 180 miles an hour, being able to see the track in person and all the drivers, and just being able to take pictures and videos. It is the experience of a lifetime. And I would like to go through and talk about each race that I've been to. And as I'm talking about each race, I will splice in some photos that were taken at the race. And at the end of the video, I'll splice in some videos that were taken. But, so the first race that I ever went to was the 2009 Watkins Glen race. It was my first ever NASCAR race. And it's kind of ironic because my first ever NASCAR race got rained out. Because I remember we went to the track on Sunday. We were all prepared for the race. They did like the national anthem, the jet flyover, and then it started to rain. So, I don't remember if they started the race, but I remember they had to cancel it that day and then reschedule it for the next day on Monday. So, yeah, it was just raining. we had to leave because they weren't able to do the race because of the rain. And we came back the next day on Monday, and they did the race, and everything was fine. And little did I know at the time that would become a common theme for NASCAR races that I've been to in person, because 3 out of the 6 NASCAR races I've been to in person have been stopped due to rain, which I'll get to later. But yeah, the 2009 Watkins Glen race was my first ever NASCAR race in person. My good friend came with me. It was just a heck of an experience. It was just so fun. My favorite driver was Jeff Gordon, who is still my all-time favorite driver. But yeah, I remember rooting for Jeff Gordon, and it was that race where he got in that huge crash with Sam Hornish Jr., I believe. It was where it was just before turn 11 or something, where there was that straightaway, and Hornish hit the wall and came back up the track and hit Gordon, and it was just a huge crash. But yeah, it was that race. But yeah, it was a really good experience, an awesome first race. I remember Tony Stewart ended up winning that race. We were where we were sitting was the carousel, I believe is what it's called. The carousel. It was just like it was just after the first turn where they had to do that 90-degree turn, and then they went up the hill. We were right there. That's where we were sitting, as you can probably see from the pictures. But yeah, and Eric was saying, in order to make new NASCAR fans, you have to have relatable drivers, drivers that people can pick as their favorite and root for, week in and week out. He was talking about how he was attracted to Matt Kenseth. I don't know what it was, but I was just attracted to Jeff Gordon. I don't know what it was about him. I honestly cannot remember. It was so long ago. But just something about him attracted me to Jeff Gordon. And from pretty much when I became a NASCAR fan up until he retired, he was my favorite driver. And yeah, so that was my first in-person NASCAR race. And my second in-person NASCAR race was I believe it was the 2011 Spring Pocono race. I know it was at Pocono in 2011. I just cannot remember which one it was. And as of this recording, ironically, the last track they raced at was Pocono. But yeah, I remember we went to Pocono in 2011, and I remember getting a picture next to the Jeff Gordon car, and I actually got to meet Joe Gibbs, the Hall of Fame NASCAR team owner and NFL coach. Here's a picture of me and my dad with Joe Gibbs, and I got his autograph, and I still have it to this day. I can splice in a picture of that. But yeah, it was another awesome experience. I got, and at every race I've gone to, I've gotten at least one 164 diecast car, which is another thing I'll get to later. But yeah, it was just a great experience. And like I remember I like really wanted a die cast car of Jeff Gordon's AARP car at the time. I thought it was really cool. I eventually did get a die cast car of that paint scheme, but I really wanted um, a die cast car of that paint scheme like right then and there, but I couldn't get it because I don't think those diecast the I don't think diecast cars with that paint scheme were for sale yet, because like it was like the first year he started driving that paint scheme, and they hadn't, and like the diecast makers didn't have that paint scheme like ready for sale yet. But I eventually did get it, but at the time I wanted it, but just wasn't available, and I got like the second generation DuPont flame car. It was the one with the like the reddish orangish color and the black flames. Well, black background and reddish orangish flames, but that was the one I got. And yeah, it was just another just great experience. And that was the second race that I had been to where it got rained out, because I remember this specifically sticks out in my brain, but I remember the specific lap that they had to pull the cars onto pit road because it was starting to rain. If my memory serves me correctly, it was lap 124. Is when they had to pull the cars onto pit road because it was raining and they couldn't race under raining conditions. So, yeah, I remember that, and we were waiting for like a long time. It was like, I want to say it was like 5 hours that we were waiting. But yeah, we were just waiting for a long time for the rain to stop. I remember thinking, like, I remember wondering if, like, they would postpone the rest of the race for tomorrow or the next day, and if we would just have to come back the next day. But it eventually stopped raining, and then, like, after, like, 5 hours or so, it stopped raining. And then they got the cars running again and finished the race. And Brad Keselowski won that race. And then I remember Jeff Gordon, he was en route to finish 5th, but I remember Ryan Newman, this was when he drove the 39 car for Richard Childress. I remember Ryan Newman passed him, and then he finished 6th. But yeah, that was the second race I went to in person. The third race that I went to in person was actually the first ever elimination chase race at Dover in the fall of 2014. It was like the first year with the new chase format, where after every 3 races, 4 drivers would get eliminated. But so yeah, I was at the first ever elimination race in the chase. And I remember I was really happy because Jeff Gordon won that race, and I got to see him win a race in person. It was just so awesome. He drove that orange and black AARP car, and like I really like that car, and I have a die cast of it, and it's kind of cool knowing that I was at the race that he drove that at, and he only drove it once, and I was at that race and he won it. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I remember he won it, and I was just super happy. And yeah, it was another just really fun experience. And before the race, there was this like little, I kind of want to say press conference, but it wasn't really a press conference. It was more like an interview. But there's this one part at Dover where they had two drivers come in, and like this guy would like ask them questions, and they would just chat, and like people could just sit there and listen. And I remember my dad got tickets to that, and the two drivers were Danica Patrick and Jeff Gordon. And I think the reason why he got those tickets was because Jeff Gordon was and is my all-time favorite driver, and he was right there, so I could see him in person. So yeah, that was great, and I'll splice in some pictures from that. And I remember like Danica Patrick was talking about her then boyfriend Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And like I remember she was like talking about like food that they've made and stuff like that, and like how they've accidentally cut each other off. And I think she mentioned something about his mullet at the time. I remember a lot of random things. Uh but yeah, it was just great experience overall again. And it made it even better that Jeff Gordon won that race. So that was pretty awesome. Um I'm trying to remember what else was special about that race. Um yeah, I mean, yeah, it was the first elimination chase race like I mentioned previously. But yeah, it was just an awesome experience. And then the fourth race I went to was the 2015 spring Martinsville race. And another cool thing about that race was it was Chase Elliott's first ever career cup start. And he is now current and he's my current favorite driver, like out of all the active drivers. So I have the right to say I was at Chase Elliott's first ever career cup start. Excuse me. But yeah. I in like by the in like by the like by the time I found out that that race would have been Chase Elliott's first career cup start, my parents had already bought the tickets to the race because like I remember I was like watching the race of the week before, and I remember I first found out because they announced that the next week would be Chase Elliott's first career cup start. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then come to find out, I was going to go to that race. So that was pretty cool. And one thing I remember about that race, it had nothing to do with the race, but it was an extremely hot day. Well, I don't know if it was like extremely hot, but it was very sunny. And I had forgotten to put sunscreen on. So I got blisters all over the side of my face because I forgot to put sunscreen on. I think we have pictures of it. But like I had blisters all over the side of my face from the sun, and I didn't even know I got blisters on the side of my face until after the race because I was just so focused on watching the race. Yeah, that was not fun. But it was a good race. It was a really long race. There were like I think 14 cautions in all. And yeah, it was just a really long race cuz I remember I had like the headphones where you could like listen to like MRN when they were commentating the race. I remember like during one of the cautions they're like Rusty, when is your flight? Because they're just like making jokes about it because the race was so long and because like the caution just kept dragging the race out. So, but yeah, that was the second race that I had been to where it had not rained. But yeah, like I remember Denny Hamlin won that race. It was like the race where Brad Keselowski was like right on his bumper towards the end of the race and he was like challenging him but he didn't have enough to pass Denny Hamlin. I remember Denny Hamlin won that race. But yeah, it was a pretty entertaining race. Made it the cautions made it pretty interesting. And also, that would become another theme for the next two races that I went to. The theme of the theme of a ton of yellows in the race would become a constant theme in that race and the next two races that I went to, which I'll get to later. But yeah, there were a lot of cautions in that race. And I remember Jeff Gordon almost won that race, but towards the end he got a pit road speeding penalty. So on the restart he had to start in the back rather than up in the front where he was. And he honestly probably could have won that race if it weren't for that speeding penalty because it was towards the end of the race, so then he had to work his way all the way up through the field again. And it's just, there wasn't enough time for him to get back up to the front by the time the race ended. So, I mean, because I remember I read his biography that came out like the year after he retired, and I remember it said that he probably could have won that race if it weren't for that pit road speeding penalty. And he ended up finishing like ninth, I think it was. But yeah. The next race that I went to was the 2017 Brickyard 400. It was pretty cool that I got to go see a race at that historic track. It was really cool. And again, like I said earlier, a lot of cautions was a big theme in that race, especially towards the end. Because like everybody was just trying to win the race and there was just a bunch of cautions late in the race. And I remember Kyle Busch was like dominated like the first part of that race. He won like the first and second stage. And then like Martin Truex and him got together and they wrecked and like that took Kyle Busch out of contention. And it broke his streak of winning the Brickyard 400 because like at the time he had won the last two Brickyard 400 and he was trying to go for a three-peat. but that wreck just took him out of contention. And I think I remember that like everybody was like really happy that he wrecked because like nobody likes Kyle Busch. But yeah, that was an awesome race. Again, that one rained. That one had it rain a little bit. Like it started to rain for a while. It was raining for like 3/4 of an hour, so 45 minutes, I think. And then they got it going again. And I remember Chase Elliott, like he got taken out of contention early because like something broke in his car and it forced him to DNF. But I just can't remember what it was. But yeah, that was another great experience. I got to experience the Brickyard, which is probably the most famous and most historic racetrack on the planet because it just has so much history with the Indy 500, which is the biggest race in the world. And yeah, I still have the tickets from that race. I think I still have like the tickets from all the races I've been to except for the first two, the Watkins Glen and Pocono race, but I still have the tickets to like all the other races that I've been to. But yeah, that when we were at the Brickyard, we were sitting on the front stretch, and like we had that like roof over our heads, so luckily the sun wasn't like shining on us, and we like weren't getting burnt. We had some nice shade. That was nice. And like I remember that was the race where like they just and like Casey Kane won that race and it was his last career win. I remember like that was the race where they just gave it to Casey Kane. Like they just let him have it because there were just so many wrecks at the end of the race, and that was like when they had the overtime line like halfway around the track from the start finish line, and in order for when you went into overtime and in order for the race to be official, the leader had to cross the overtime line. And like there were so many wrecks that continued to happen before the leader crossed the overtime line that they had to continue to restart the race and do a green white checkered. I remember, and like when the race ended, there was another crash that happened, and NASCAR should have thrown like under normal circumstances they should have thrown the caution, and it was before Casey Kane had passed the overtime line. You could very clearly see that he had not crossed the overtime line yet, and under normal circumstances, they should have thrown the caution and had them redo it again and come back for the start. But it was just getting late, and they don't have lights around the track, so they couldn't continue to race into the night. So they were just like, you know what, we're just going to let Casey Kane have it. We're just going to let him win because we can't keep doing this. So, yeah, that was another caution-filled one. But, yeah, that was a great race. And the sixth and most recent NASCAR race that I've been to in person was the biggest one of them all, the 2019 Daytona 500. The 61st running. Yeah, the 61st running. That was another great race, and again, like I mentioned previously, the ton of cautions was a big theme towards the end of the race. There were a lot of cautions towards the end of that race, and I remember Denny Hamlin ended up winning that race, and yeah, like they did. I don't even remember how many overtimes, but I remember they went into overtime, and it was just another great race. It was by far the biggest race I had been to, and yeah, I got a lot of pictures and videos there. Yeah, it's like, it's probably the biggest track I've been to, being Daytona International Speedway. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but yeah, it was just a really great experience, and it was the race where Jamie McMurray came back for that one race and drove the 40 car, and it was like Kurt Busch's first race in the one car. I think it was Martin Truex's first race in the 19 car. I think it was Jimmy Johnson's first race with Alley as his primary sponsor. But yeah, it was like Alex Bowman's like first race as the full-time. No, wait, no, never mind. That was the year previous. But yeah, it was just a great experience. So yeah, those were the races I've been to in person. And yeah, like Eric was saying, like if you want to make new NASCAR fans and like engage like current NASCAR fans, he had like 4 points. I can't remember the fourth, but it was like relatable drivers. Oh no, wait, yeah, I do remember all four. It was, yeah, have like relatable drivers that people can pick and choose and root for week in and week out. Going to races in person, because that is an experience in and of itself, as I was just talking about. It's just the experience of a lifetime. It's such a good experience. Video games was another one he talked about. Which, like, you have to have a good video game because it helps the average person get into it, because video games usually people can afford, and it just helps the average person get into it, and it has to be like a good video game, because like he was saying, like the most current NASCAR games, the NASCAR Heat series, those haven't really been doing the job. Like they're not as good as other NASCAR games that have been made before. But, and then he said like the other one was like collectibles, like memorabilia and like merchandise. Like for me, like the big thing that I like to collect, like in regards to merchandise for NASCAR, is die-cast NASCARs. Like the main, I mean, I have some big ones, but like the main ones I collect are the 164 die-cast ones. I've been collecting those like basically since I became a NASCAR fan. I made a video where I like showed all of the ones that I have. I'll put the link to that video in the description. But like I have a huge collection. I mean, not as big as like really big NASCAR fans like Eric and like other NASCAR YouTubers. Like I don't have as big of a collection as them, but I have a pretty big collection. I have probably somewhere in between 50 and 70 164 diecast NASCARs that I've just collected over the years. And yeah, that's got to be that's like a big thing like for NASCAR if they want to become like really relevant again. Not that they aren't now, but like if they want to become as popular as they were in like the late 90s and early 2000s, you have to have like really good merchandise, like the collectible cars, like t-shirts, hats, and like whatever else like that people could buy that they would enjoy using or wearing. It has to be good. And then the other thing was video games. You have to have good video games. I right now am in possession and own 10 NASCAR video games, ranging anywhere from NASCAR 99 to NASCAR Heat 4. I don't have every single game in between there, but that's like the oldest and newest NASCAR game that I have. Like I have NASCAR 99, NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup, NASCAR 06 Total Team Control, NASCAR 08, NASCAR 09, NASCAR 14, NASCAR 15 Victory Edition, NASCAR Heat 2, NASCAR Heat 3, and NASCAR Heat 4. Those are the 10 NASCAR video games that I currently own. I have some other like older classic NASCAR video games on my wish list as of right now that hopefully I can get sometime in the near future and play on my PS2 that I have. Like some of the games I have on my wish list right now are NASCAR Dirt to Daytona and NASCAR Thunder 2004. Like those are like classic NASCAR games, like and widely considered to be the best NASCAR games that have ever been made. But yeah, and like for me, I remember, like for me, I know a lot of you will probably disagree with me on this. If you're a hardcore NASCAR fan and like hardcore NASCAR video gamer, you'll probably disagree with me on this, and that's fine. But I have reasoning for this. But NASCAR '09, the last EA NASCAR video game, will always hold a special place in my heart. Yeah, I know it was the last EA NASCAR game, and it was like at the beginning of EA's fall from grace, and it was really crappy, like with the family mode, with the assists all the way turned up, and like they didn't even have licensed cars, and like all the glitches and bugs. Like I have the PS2 version. Like I don't have the newer generation versions. I had the PS2 version. But it will always hold a special place in my heart because I remember really wanting that game. I think it was like my first ever NASCAR video game. So that increases the value of it for me. It was like, I think it was like the first ever NASCAR video game that I ever played. So it'll hold a special place in my heart because of that. And like I remember really wanting it, and my parents got it for me for Christmas that year, and I had like a really big reaction. I remember just playing it a lot and just having a good time. And I mean, and now looking back in retrospect and like looking at the user reviews of it and the reception of it, it wasn't that great. But it will always hold that special place in my heart for those reasons. And I still to this day remember my first win that I ever got in that game, like out of all the series. It was at Homestead, and I was driving Mark Martin's number 8 U.S. Army car. And I remember I got my first win in that game with that car at that track. I specifically remember that, and I remember being like really happy that I finally won my first race in that game. And I remember I was like leading the race towards the end of it, and I remember thinking like I could actually win this, and then I won, and that just holds a special place in my heart. Yeah, NASCAR 09 will always hold a special place in my heart for those reasons. And plus, Jeff Gordon, my all-time favorite driver, was on the cover. So for those reasons, it will always hold a special place in my heart. But yeah, that is my NASCAR fan story. That's how I became interested in NASCAR, and like experiences I've had with NASCAR and like with video games, merchandise, the actual races itself. But yeah, that's how I became a NASCAR fan. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and just remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.
those that can't see this, there were 10 cars literally knotted together. To go, we understand NASCAR has just told the teams we'll update you as NASCAR updates us right now.
Top 10 in the middle line now has drafting assistance from Joey Logano. In the middle for about the 11th spot is Ryan Blaney leads him back to the corner.
A couple of Connecticut drivers in the middle lane all by themselves.
Button up a few things over there next to you, get the beach sand off the racetrack, and hey, let's get this thing in the books.
Listen, I'm with you. I'm ready to find out who's going to win the 61st Daytona 500, but the drivers have to give us some help here. Boys, let's mind our P's and Q's. We're this close to the end. Let's see if we can bring home what we have left in one piece.
Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Michael McDowell, and Ryan Preece. That's your top